Could I have everyone's attention, please? We're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everybody to our symposium tonight. Could you all leave one of those lights on just so I can see what I'm supposed to be saying? You don't have to have that many, that's fine. One down, Bob, is fine. This is a symposium presented by Sustainable Ramona. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about what Sustainable Ramona is all about. For those of you that don't know, and I will need a little more light for this one. Okay. Sustainable Ramona is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation organized to foster sustainability in Ramona. The mission of Sustainable Ramona is to lead the transition to a sustainable climate with a healthy economy via education, connections, projects, promotions, and ultimately a profitable, independent electricity producing area, microgrid. To date, the group has sponsored educational forums on the benefits of microgrid technology, San Diego Climate Action Plan, water conservation, waste management, worm farming, composting, electric houses, and renewable energy, along with 2 annual Earth Day festivals and a Harvest Day festival. Our 3rd annual Earth Day festival is coming up on April 20th at the Beegent Ranch off Highland Valley Road. Think Hawkwatch. I'd like to introduce our Sustainable Ramona Microgrid Subcommittee tonight. Joyce Strand is zooming in. She's the president of Sustainable Ramona. Donna Barnes in the back there. Belinda Long. Where are you, Belinda?
She stepped out.
She stepped out. Walt Sinwald, over here behind the video camera. Nick Soroka. Bill Addison. Bob Maycomer. Larry Barnes. And I'm Rob Llewellyn, your moderator for today. I want to tell you what this symposium is about. It's the creation of Ramona's own electric utility, a Ramona microgrid or microgrids, and the possibility of becoming an electric co-op, which means unplugging from San Diego Gas and Electric. How many people know what a microgrid is? Raise your hands if you do. How many people know what an electric co-op is? Okay, well that's about a quarter or a third of the folks here, so it should be a pretty good educational experience tonight. I'd like to introduce our speaker for this evening. Luis A. Reyes Jr. is the CEO of Kit Carson Electric Co-op of New Mexico. He began his work with Kit Carson Electric Cooperative Incorporated in 1984 as a systems engineer before becoming chief executive officer and general manager in 1994. He has provided vision and leadership building a cooperative that offers a variety of diverse, competitive services including broadband, renewable energy, and low-cost propane. Kit Carson Electric Cooperative undertook a solar deployment plan in 2017 to build approximately 100% of Kit Carson's daytime electrical energy needs by 2022, utilizing solar generation and battery storage. The cooperative completed the 100% daytime renewable goal, reducing members' electric rates. Kit Carson Electric Cooperative is currently exploring green hydrogen as a long-term duration energy solution. I met with Luis a few months ago when I was back in Taos, and he mentioned at one point, New Mexico's a little ahead of the curve. California kind of watches what New Mexico does sometimes. So with that, I'd like to, Luis is up here on the screen. We'll be asking Luis some questions and topics, and we'll have him respond. Mr. Reyes, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You've got a very busy schedule. It's good to see you again.
Thank you for the invitation.
Since not everyone here is familiar with northern New Mexico, can you tell us about the Taos area?
So, Kit Carson serves in north central New Mexico. Our headquarters is in Taos, and we serve in 3 counties, Taos, Colfax, and Rio Arriba. We're about 60 miles north of Santa Fe. We serve in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, and serve in the Carson National Forest. We have 6 municipalities, 2 pueblos, and our predominant economic development force is tourism, generally outdoor tourism, recreation. We have 4 ski areas in the region. Taos Pueblo is one of the longest inhabited pueblos in the world. Actually, they've lived there over 1,000 years. So we have a very diverse community of tricultural, and that probably explains it. When it comes to our demographics and economic status, still a very poor community, even though we're an art colony north of Santa Fe. Construction, tourism are probably the 2 major economies. In 2014, we had a big mining lode about 25 miles north of Taos that closed. It was a Chevron mine. About 400 jobs were lost, and basically collapsed an economy that that northern part of our area was used to. And now we have transitioned to see how we can assist our economy by really becoming a green-minded community when it comes to energy. And so, as Rob mentioned, we have started basically our own version of the green economy, starting with the transition of our power supplier and a transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy, primarily solar energy.
Luis, I had a couple of questions, topics for you to ask. I might kind of combine them. One was the history of the Kit Carson Electric Cooperative and organizational structure. You can take those separately or combine them together.
Yeah, so Kit Carson actually was formed in 1944. And the way a co-op was formed is really the members, the citizens of the community decided they wanted to control their own power supply. And so we're governed by a 9-member, well, today, an 11-member board of directors that are elected from the membership. So back in 1944, and the other thing I think the group should know, across the country, there is about 900 co-ops, about 830 distribution co-ops or co-ops like Kit Carson that serve the end-use customer, and about 70 what we call generation and transmission co-ops, or co-ops of co-ops that are the power supply. So they generate or they operate the large, historically fossil fuel power plants. So we've been in existence since '44. It's democratically controlled. Our board members who govern the organization are elected by the membership. And historically, up to 2016, Kit Carson was a member of a generation transmission co-op, which we bought all our power. And in 2016, as our power supplier did not want to really embrace renewable energy. In fact, they had a 5% cap on what co-ops could do. So we could only get 5% of our total energy needs from renewable energy. Kit Carson decided to exit our contract and find a power supplier who wanted to embrace the vision and mission of its membership here in northern New Mexico. We signed on with Guzman Energy. They're headquartered in Denver. And Rob, as you mentioned, one of the goals of our membership was that we get as much of our energy from solar power as we could. And so we set what I would say a community goal of 100% daytime solar. And we said so in 2016, we started that. July of 2022, we hit that goal. So on any sunny day, we generate all our energy from the sun. We have 30,000 members or 30,000 meters. So as most rural areas, we're pretty sparse. There's about 10 meters per mile of line. And currently we probably have some of the lowest electric rates in the state of New Mexico. So that's the history, the structure. It's member governed. Every 4 years, the board runs for office. You have to be a member, owner of the co-op. So if you buy electricity from the co-op, you automatically become an owner of the co-op. And therefore you have a voice or vote in bylaws, major policy decisions, and of course, who represents you on the board. Kit Carson's, we have 5 districts, so we have 5 different areas that we have representation from. Taos being the central, and then the outlying areas all have representation that sit on a board. We have monthly board meetings, and so we do the business of our members monthly, and board meetings are always open to the membership. And so we believe that this is one of the better structures in this new energy transition that I've come across, mainly because there is a lot of transparency and a lot of at least public discussion on what the best energy option is for the community.
When I met with you back about 3 or 4 months ago, you mentioned that there were 17 electric cooperatives in the state of New Mexico. I'm sorry, 16, and 4 in California. Can you give us a little history and how electric distribution basically just works in the state of New Mexico?
So you're right. In probably in the more rural states, New Mexico, there's a lot of co-ops, and there's 16 in New Mexico. There's probably 22 in Colorado. I'd say 70 in Texas. Some of the bigger rural states, these are areas that generally the investor-owned utilities did not want to serve, or the only electric service was in the major town. So back in the 30s, Taos, the town of Taos did have power. A couple of brothers had a old gas generator, and they served in a small vicinity. And so that's one reason. Well, that's probably the primary reason co-ops were formed. It was around the New Deal. Roosevelt introduced the co-op model in 1936, and it was really to bring electricity to all rural parts of America. And out of that formed the 830 so co-ops across the country. Co-ops are in 48 states. I think one of the big differences is just the population. New Mexico, the last census, the entire state has 2.3 million people and is the 5th largest landmass state. So a lot of property out here, not a lot of people. And therefore, not really conducive to have a large invest-owned utilities like you do in California with San Diego Gas and Electric and Southern Cal Edison and PG&E. So the model works really well for rural areas. Again, there's 4. I know 2 pretty well. Anza has a co-op, and Pluma Sierra has a co-op that I'm really familiar with those operations. But what it did, it gave, as I mentioned earlier, it really gave kind of the power to the people to decide how they wanted this utility to run. And back in 36, when the program was formed, and a lot of co-ops between 36 and 44, a lot of rural communities, some of the benefits is we get low interest loans from the federal government to be able to build infrastructure. They had engineering standards, so all of the co-ops build to the same standard. We got the same engineering specs, so we all use the same type of equipment, transformers, So on the technical side, it became pretty universal of how co-ops are to operate, and then the governance model. We're also not for profit. So our board is not incentivized by how much money you make at the end of the year, but how well your service is, and have you met your member owners' wishes. And any margins we get, we do one or two things: we roll it back into the infrastructure, or we return it in future years as what's called patronage capital or capital credits. So everyone gets a so to speak, a dividend at some point in the future when the co-op can afford it. And we're cost-based, which means we only charge the cost of service plus a rate of return to operate. And then any difference, again, goes back to the members. And so the structure is really to afford every resident or citizen access to electric service, regardless of your economic class or who you are. It was designed that everyone in rural areas was to get electricity affordably and reliably.
Luis, how does Kit Carson generate its electricity? I know that you told me you have multiple microgrids within the system, but maybe you could tell folks about like the cover on the parking lot at Main Place in Taos and expand on that a little bit, and the airport.
So I think this is one of the successes of the co-op or Kit Carson is we started to get a lot of pressure from our membership right around 2002 after we changed the power supplier from one co-op to another co-op. That 5%, getting 5% of our energy from renewable resources was just not good enough. And so we went back to our power supplier that says, we need tools to be able to enable our members to have more, and not just those who have it behind the meter, rooftop. We need it to be accessible for everybody. And so, after several years, we just went back and forth with really no solution for our members to get more renewable. In 2014, we only had 3% of our total energy in a state like New Mexico that has 300 days of sunshine. Only 3% of our energy was coming from solar resources. And so our board, with member input, decided to let's find a new power supplier that gives us an opportunity to really build locally the resources that we need and that we want to serve our electric needs. And so we formed some solar committee groups of the members. We have a solar committee of the board, so they're focused on renewable energy. And out of this, we did a couple things. The first thing is we found a power supplier, as I mentioned, Guzman Energy, who has worked with Kit Carson and its members to build. Today, we have 20 different solar installations around our territory. So it's distributed. It's not one big, massive solar facility. Every community, so to speak, has its own solar facility. We have some that are large, and we have some that are parking canopies at a soccer field, all generating power to get into the grid. And so with the input of the membership, direction of the board, and assistance from Guzman, we built this distributed solar model that now other co-ops are starting to build because it does bring in resiliency. If I do have one solar facility go down, I still have 19 others operating. My contract with Guzman is they fill in the gaps. So for nighttime, and as we work on some, how do we get renewables at night, Guzman fills it in from the gap from the grid, either with their resources or they purchase resources. And so Kit Carson's ultimate goal is to get to 100% renewable around the clock. And we also have introduced battery storage into our portfolio. So about a fourth of our load can be covered for 4 hours with batteries. We use a Tesla Megapack. We've coupled them with uh, our last two solar facilities. So our batteries are charged with solar. And so we're also trying to, uh, in some cases, refute those critics that say you're using, fossil fuel to charge a battery that may charge an EV. Ours is, if you charge an EV on Kit Carson system, it is a true renewable product. And so with that goal in mind, we're not there 100%, but that's kind of the roadmap we've laid out to become really much more sustainably locally, so we don't have to so much rely on the grid 100% of the time. We do have partnerships, so all these aren't done without active participation with cities and schools. We have relationships with, I believe it's 4 of the municipalities we've partnered with on some property deals to locate solar facilities on land that probably wouldn't be used for anything other than utility. A couple examples is we have a solar facility on a leach field of a wastewater treatment plant. So they're not going to use that wastewater treatment field probably for anything else than, in this case, a solar facility. We located another solar facility between a neighborhood and a landfill. So the solar facility is basically between a neighborhood and a dump. And so we locate these at areas that also community has agreed these are the best locations for this facility. We've also taken a plug and play approach, so we don't have a lot of system upgrades. So we size them so they fit within the electric grid, and that they and we do a lot of studies, but they don't cause any other issues when they come online in our grid. So we've done a lot of work to make sure that, again, the members engage, it's distributed. And again, I think it's important that our power supplier, Guzman, is kind of our insurance policy, our backup. And over time, as we transition, they'll have lesser of a role as we get to 100% renewables. And at that point, then the community has 100% of the say of the type of energy we have currently and going into the future.
I'm going to switch gears and jump ahead just a little bit to one of the questions that'll be coming up from our members. But you said when some areas, and I think you mentioned at least 1 or 2 in Colorado, were beginning to put a co-op together. First, they put a solar co-op together. How did that work?
Well, so some of the models we've seen to start is actually there, and I forgot the community, Robin. I'll get you that name for the group, but they just really started a solar co-op, where you create kind of what you mentioned at the onset. You're a 501c, so get a legal structure that really promotes solar, and then they just not advocated for policy changes both at local and state and at federal levels, but then start to enable this policy to be put in action. I think in this instance, California seems to be pretty aggressive on some of this, but I don't know at the local level. I'm very familiar with New Mexico law, but not with California law. But what it did is it gave these folks and I believe it's in the kind of the Denver area, a sense of what true democratically controlled energy supply meant to them. And so if they really felt that solar and it's kind of morphing to solar plus batteries and all the benefits it brought to them versus always relying on an investor-owned utility, which at some points may not have the best interest of the ratepayer in mind, because they do have to balance, I believe, between the stockholder and the ratepayer. And so we've seen those models evolve. The co-op model is an old model. A lot in ag, and farmers. And so there may be more co-ops in California, but not electric. There may be ag co-ops. that kind of like small farms aggregating their crops or their product so they could sell to the market in bulk, and then they all kind of separate the margins they make at the end of the year. But I think the model, at least from my perspective, when you have this energy transition and you have now more folks wanting to participate in their energy supply than even 10 years ago. People want to say in their energy supply. People want to know why the rates are going up. And I do think, especially in this area, we're really concerned about the impact on climate. It does, I'm not a scientist, but it does seem to be hotter and be colder than when I grew up. I'm from Taos. Seems like it's windier. The climate has changed, and so we feel strongly about that as a community. That what brings people to northern New Mexico and keeps people here is clean air, clean water, beautiful mountains, and if there's a way to keep that pristine and still get the amenities of an urban area, why wouldn't you pursue that? And then if you can make it affordable for everyone, why wouldn't you go down that path? And so there's a lot of factors. We think it's a good economic development driver that really states that northern New Mexico does really care about a clean environment. And I think it's also important that, we have ranchers and farmers, and they may not come across as environmentalist in that scope, but they want to make sure their cattle are watered with clean water, and that their crops are with clean water, watered with clean water, and so they share the same values, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. We all have the same value system. We just approach it from a different way. And the co-op with its members has taken the lead that we can help on the energy side really meet our goals of just keeping the land that we've kind of inherited as clean as possible. And then you integrate it with two tribes that have been here over 1,000 years. And it really has, this really has evolved as a community project. It's something that, and I think can happen when you do get different communities of interest intersecting and says what's best for our community and what's best for our future. In this case, energy, renewable energy. I think on top of that, about 20 years ago, our membership asked us to get into internet, and I think it does relate because we felt that if we introduced internet and fiber optic, we would be introducing economies that really didn't need a lot of water and need a lot of buildings, that you could actually create an economy that you could do telephonically. And so, we own and operate 3,000 miles of fiber optic, offer gig services, and have people across the country live and recreate here in northern New Mexico, but still do business in the east and west coasts. So it really has been a great community project that outlines more our values of what we're about, using energy as kind of our statement.
I can testify that Kit Carson Internet is quite nice, and compared with several others I've had locally here. You mentioned FDR kind of instigated the co-op system in 1936. Was that part of the Rural Electrification Association?
So that was the REA, the Rural Electrification Act, and that formed the electric co-ops. And in 49, that act also then introduced telephones. So there's a lot of telephone co-ops in this country with the same mission. And as if you go into some of these rural areas, as we talk about technology, some of these rural areas that I work with that have a telephone co-op, have the same great experiences on communications where, in Taos, you can get gig service. In Kentucky, rural communities in Kentucky, you can get gig service, where in big cities, it's hard to get that type of service affordably. And so that's another example of how the co-op model has really benefited through infrastructure, the rural parts of the United States. It does not mean that you can't introduce co-ops into urban areas. I think it's just a little bit different because you have an existing infrastructure that you have to navigate. When we started, it was areas that no one wanted, and so we basically had a kind of a clean sheet of paper to build our infrastructure. But we serve some of the toughest areas. They're mountainous, a lot of feral lands, hills and valleys are very tough to serve. And so I'm proud of what the co-ops across the country have done to make sure that at least in electricity and telephone, that all Americans who want electricity or phone are getting it.
The customers, the members, the owners of Kit Carson, how do they participate? You touched on this before, but can you elucidate us a little more on that?
There's board meetings, but I talk to customers every day. I mean, I talk to customers when there's outages. So it's really how the owner wants to participate. We have board meetings, so if they have issues, they come to a board meeting. You have elected officials who are your board members, so you have access to your board members at any time. We have annual meetings. At our annual meetings, that's where bylaws and reports are done, where it really is a meeting of the members to hear what their concerns are. Members have the ability, to call meetings. I think one of the things that we've done is we have formed what is called consumer advisory committees. As I mentioned earlier, that we have 5 districts that we serve. We have formed committees in member committees in each district, and every quarter we go out and visit with them. We go to their little communities and give them what we're doing, and then kind of get a report card back on the things we're doing well and the things we're not doing so well, and then develop a plan to either figure out how to do things better or let people know what is going on and why these issues are occurring. So I like the model because it's very interactive. It's really at what level does a member owner want to participate. I think the consumer advisory, by us going into the communities, means that they really don't have to travel far. And then with email and Zoom and technology, the policy, I think what's important is the policymakers who I answer to are accessible almost every day to the member owners. So it could be anything from, I get everything from why is my bill so high, or why did it blink, or why was an outage too long, to what type of energy efficiency programs do you have, so you can help me lower my bill. So I think that's the value of a smaller organization. I think when you get into investor-owned utilities, they're just so large, and they become almost impersonal because they don't know who their electric users are. We do, and we make it a point to try to meet with them as often as we can.
Just to follow through on that a little bit, everyone picture if you wanted to get an answer to a question you had on your bill with SDG&E, how easy would it be to talk to the CEO of Enron or SDG&E? I met with Luis, and the door to his office is the same area where that you stand to pay your bill. And he is open to folks coming and talking to him about all kinds of specific things. Luis, I think that's just a great way to go. And of course, it would be much harder if you had more than 30,000 meters, but still, there's probably a lot of electric companies smaller than yours that don't allow that. I was very impressed with that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing in most co-ops, I can't speak for all of them, but at least the co-ops that I've is we're involved in the community. I mean, that's what really makes the co-op is because we're owned by the community. So, going to chamber events and here we have an organization called Renewable Taos. It sounds almost like Sustainable or Ramona, but it's a group of members that really want to kind of accelerate the discussion and the actions via climate change. And so we actually, I meet with them. I go to their board meetings. We sponsor the EV Expo. So I think that's the other important thing is we're part of the community. I mean, it isn't, for me personally, it's since I grew up here, it's not really a job. It's really making a difference. And I think that's what you get when you live in the community that you work for. And I think being personal, Rob's right. During my office is right off the lobby. I can see everyone who walks in or out. So anyone who wants to talk to me on any issue, if they have time and I have time, we'll visit. And even during COVID, when people still wanted to come and pay their bill, so I'd go out and talk to them in line, make sure everyone was okay, and times if they didn't have cash, take their payment so they wouldn't have to stay in the cold. I think that's a difference of a co-op model, and I think why we've been successful is we really care about what happens to our members, and it does make a difference because on some of these challenges that we've accomplished, when you tell a community that you can become 100% daytime solar, there's a lot of critics out there that says you can't, and but the day you do, the members were so proud of our accomplishment because it became our accomplishment. So I think one of the things I'm as I speak and I've spoken to other groups is these things are possible. These things are really possible. You can get a lot of renewable energy. It can be affordable, and with technology over time, I think there's this transition we're in where we are going to have to use batteries or gas or some kind of transition fuel. But in a few years, I do believe that we will be able to, at least Kit Carson's goal is to become 100% renewable around the clock.
Well, one thing I think everybody here tonight would be very interested in hearing, since Hawaii has the highest electric rates of any state, San Diego Gas and Electric is substantially higher than the state of Hawaii. We would like to hear you talk a little bit about Kit Carson's rates, electric rates, and rate history.
So, electric rates are broken up primarily in New Mexico in two components, the power, cost of power, and the cost of distribution. So everything from the power supply to the big power stations, and then that's one cost, and then everything from the power station to your meter and to your plugs is a second cost. So the first thing, I've been the CEO of Kit Carson for 31 years. We've only had two distribution rate increases in 31 years. And so one was I believe 8% and one was a 9%. And so, if you do your math, that's 16% over 31 years. We've kept the distribution side relatively stable. On the power side, a second reason Kit Carson left its power supplier is from 2000 to 2014, our rates doubled. Went up 100%, and so it was becoming unaffordable. Where 75% of our bill to our members was the cost of power, and so today we've been able to lower that to about 45%. The second thing is we've been able, through the board's direction, stabilize our power rate. So 45 to 50% of our bill is going to be fixed to 2040. With Guzman's contract, with the way we've negotiated our solar cost, half our members' bill won't change for 17 years. We're working on the distribution side. That's kind of the poles and transformers, all the stuff that you see in the roads in the neighborhoods. We think that's going to increase, but that's going to increase slower. And it gives us some latitude because I have half your bill fixed. Today, when we paid off our contract exit to Guzman or for Guzman to enter that contract and hit our solar goals, we reduced our wholesale power cost by 33%, and we've given all that money back to our members. About $18 million is what we give about $1 million back a month to our members. Average retail residential rate, and it depends on summer winter, is probably between 13 and 14 cents a kilowatt hour. And it was up at 18 and 19 cents. And so my goal here at the co-op is really to stabilize them. We always try to lower them. I don't think that's realistic with some of the other costs that are pushing or driving our costs, like insurances. We live in the forest. Getting insurance for wildfire issues is getting tougher and tougher. More members want our facilities underground. We have a lot of overhead construction here in northern New Mexico. But we've been able to stabilize rates and have some of the lowest rates in the Southwest. And half of that is going to be fixed for 17 years. So a very small portion of people's bills will be subject to increases over the next few years.
13 cents a kilowatt hour versus, I think SDG&E is at an average of 48. So what are some of the plans for the future for Kit Carson Electric Co-op?
So that's a good question. We're going to continue to build more solar. Under our contract with Guzman, a couple things. We want to enable, we have 2 pueblos, and they are really talking about more sovereignty issues. And energy sovereignty is one of them. So we're working with them to see how we can help them supply more of their energy, be more self-sustaining. So we have relationships with our 2 pueblos, Taos and Picaris Pueblo, both which we have projects to build solar and batteries, both to serve the pueblos, but then the excess to serve the members. So we have a couple of solar and battery projects we're currently working on. We're looking now, guys, on more distributed batteries, so we can put more batteries out into the system, both for resilience and for reliability, so that if we do have wildfire issues or just need extreme weather, we have batteries from 2 to 4 hours that can help keep critical infrastructure operating while the lawmakers and first responders decide what course of action to take for that event. We're also building 3 microgrids for wildfire mitigation at some of our mountain towns, where we actually will have solar and storage. They'll be monitoring. We're going to introduce AI into our architecture so that kind of real simple, have a bunch of cameras looking at the forest and kind of learning what is a start of a fire. And with the intelligence, the whole scheme is to be able to turn on a microgrid, shut the power line down so there's no issue with the power line from extreme weather, give people, citizens, a chance to figure out what's going on, but still have power, communications, water, everything you need. And so we have 3 of those that we just recently got a grant from the DOE to build. And if that's successful, we want to build more microgrids so we can separate different parts of our system for different reasons. And then we're really looking right now at long duration storage. Batteries, right now, I think the best you can get from a utility size battery is 4 to 6 hours. Here in northern New Mexico, when we do get a lot of snow. When you have 2 or 3 days of snowy days, 4-hour battery doesn't handle it. So we're looking at green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is looking at reclaimed or effluent water from wastewater treatment plants. So we want to reuse water that people would otherwise not use, except probably golf courses. Clean it to a level of purity that is needed for the process. Use solar power to separate the water to hydrogen and oxygen, and then store it. And then when we need it, run it through a fuel cell, so there's no emissions. And then the fuel cell will generate electricity when we need the electricity, and then create that cycle. So we have 2 municipalities, a mine that has a cavern full of contaminated water, and we want to build another 60 megawatts of solar to drive this green hydrogen process and have battery storage for 24 to 48 hours. And so and right now we're actually writing a proposal to the federal government to get some financing. With that type of technology that I think is here but hasn't been proven in a bigger scale, I do think you can get to 100% renewables in a responsible time with current technology that just needs to be refined. So those are our goals right now, and right now we're on target. By 2026, Kit Carson will probably be about 65 to 70% renewable, just with these solar and batteries we have outside of the hydrogen. If we were to get the hydrogen, we'd be close to 90% renewable by probably 2030. And so, again, pretty confident that we'll hit that first number. But we think a green hydrogen product could take us over the top to hit our renewable energy goals, and use non-potable water. There's a lot of wastewater treatment plants in our territory in the country that basically they just put it back into the ground or clean and put it back in rivers, and we're saying, why don't we just use that for energy? The byproduct of this process is water. So again, that's our future goals, and we already have either some started and some under some application review.
And Bill, we were going to get you to mention, just before we got into the questions, to talk about the solar and microgrids and the Coalition for Community Solar Access. If you all don't mind, we're recording everything, so I'd like you to come up here and just speak into this microphone and give me a test. There's a button on the top. Pull it towards you on the very top.
I've worked on 2 microgrid projects, which I think are the typical ones you would see in California. One is University of California, San Diego. That is a solar microgrid combined with what they call combined heat and power, CHP, turbines, and a similar system up in Northern California at a casino. Casinos can't afford to go without power for very long because they lose like millions of dollars per hour if they're not operating 24/7. So they wanted a microgrid at that casino. But that combination of solar and CHP, combined heat and power, I think is typical of microgrid type systems. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
I did take, you asked the question earlier, I took the opportunity today to just get on the phone with San Diego Gas and Electric. You mentioned that, and I decided I'm going to ask them how I could sign up for community solar. And it took about an hour and a half on the phone. I finally got somebody who was involved with SDG&E solar systems. And they basically said to me, well, you already are community solar because you're part of community choice aggregation. I thought that was a pretty weak answer, frankly, because the solar that we could be involved with could be 50 miles away, 200 miles away, I don't know.
Right.
Wherever San Diego Gas and Electric gets that solar from. But community solar ideally would be like, and I drive past this every day, the 40 acres that's for sale next to the high school, right? There's endangered species there, so it's very hard to develop that land. I don't know what prairie shrimp is, honestly, but that's what's there, and it makes that land very hard to develop. But for example, if the people of Ramona wanted to put a solar plant on those 40 acres, each of us could buy a number of the actual modules, solar modules that go into that plant. And then we'd be part of that community solar project. Slightly different from I think Luis talked about a solar co-op somewhere in Colorado. I think that's a little bit different, because in a co-op, you're actually owning that facility. I think in the community solar, we would be hiring a developer who would own that solar plant, and we'd be more or less micro investors in that overall project. I talked to a buddy of mine today who has a community solar project in LA. In that case, it's a warehouse owner who has 6 acres of dry storage warehouses somewhere in LA. I'm assuming it's in eastern LA somewhere. So 6 acres of rooftop. Dry storage, so their need for power is minimal. They have lights, probably no air conditioning, probably lights here and there, emergency power. They wanted to see what they could do with their 6 acres of rooftop. So they put on enough solar, obviously, about a tenth of that was enough they needed to supply their needs. The rest they're selling to the community. So that's a nice community solar type project.
Thanks, Bill.
I'd like to comment, because I think Bill is right on. That's one of the values of the co-op. We have two. We actually had the first community solar project in New Mexico. It was just as Bill explained. We worked with a local school, not as big, but we built some parking canopies, and then we worked with the school, where the school actually helped sell the panels to the neighborhood. You own the panels. You get credit on your bill as if they were on your house, but they're not at your house. They entered into an O&M contract with the co-op, and so we made sure it always worked. They got a credit, and then any excess or any panels that weren't sold went to the school. So the school got some benefit, and then we rented the land. So there was that was a win-win-win for everybody. The second one we did was with a tribe. They decided to build a solar facility. We worked with them to say, we'll take the excess after we serve the tribal members. So we did to help them, and so every tribal member was treated fairly. We did a summer and winter rate. So we gave them credit. So we took all the energy from the tribe, from the Pueblo. We gave every tribal member a credit pursuant to the tribal government, and we lowered their bills by that much. And so we had, so under that, the board of directors at the co-op voted on it. You meet with the members who wanted it, and we have 2 that have functioned perfectly, and you have ownership and buy-in from the the locals because they actually know where their power is coming from. And if you pass that charter school every day, you know that you own 1, 2, or 10 panels. So that model does work, and we have 2 of those functioning at Kit Carson today.
Thanks. I'd like to alternate between some questions we already have from our committee and other members of Sustainable Ramona with comments and questions from you all. So tell everybody your name and go for it.
Hi, I'm Mark Hughes, and I think you partially answered my question already. I'm curious if your co-op encourages private residences to produce excess electricity and feed into your microgrid. You know, here in San Diego, those of us that have had solar generation for a while now, we get paid retail rates for our electricity, but people coming on board now will only get wholesale rates. So obviously, there's less encouragement for people to generate excess electricity. And our system actually at our house generates enough that we actually feed into the grid at night from our battery, so we get the best rates. And I was curious what your feelings are about people deliberately producing more than they need to feed into your microgrid.
So, so before we got to 100%, we really encouraged it. After we're at 100%, without batteries, we have no place to put the excess energy. 2 big investor-owned utilities and a G&T control the transmission. So they're really restrictive on me selling excess out to the market. So we're kind of right now in a gray area of what do we do? It's just imagine having a 5-gallon bucket full of water. The next drop is something's going to spill over. We are talking to the community about community, not solar, but community storage. And we're also encouraging folks who put rooftop to start using storage so that we're a winter nighttime peaker. I would take their excess energy if I could take it at night during the wintertime. So if they would put it in a battery, I don't have a problem paying a premium for it when I need it. I think the co-op is starting to have a problem to pay a premium when you don't need it, right? So at 3 in the afternoon in the summer, I probably am 150%. That's how much solar we have here. We have 50% more than we need. And so we're struggling of how to handle fairly the behind the meter without batteries. So we're really encouraging more storage either before the meter or after the meter.
Go ahead, Mark.
Maybe you didn't hear. Do you have tiered rates where the rates differ the time of day? So like when we feed in at night, we're going to get paid more than if we feed in during the day when they don't need it.
That's our plan. Is that's how we'd incentivize you to put in your battery, and then at nighttime let me take it and I pay you a higher rate. Because if our ultimate goal is to get to 100% renewable, at nighttime the reality is we're probably getting some fossil fuel generation somewhere. And if I can offset that, because that's the one of our values of the community, then we're not opposed to paying a little bit more for that. But during the daytime, if I'm already paying X for solar, the question is, why should I pay more? So I think a time differential at nighttime would be fair to pay higher at nighttime when Kit Carson needs it, and offsets any carbon, any CO2 emitter off the grid.
Mark is my neighbor. I need to talk to you about trying to set up a microgrid on our street. There's about 13 of us. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
This is one of our questions that came up earlier this week from Walt on our group. Luis, are the electric rates low enough to encourage your members to switch to EVs to save on fuel cost and maintenance, or are they waiting for EV prices to drop, or are people strongly devoted to their ICE internal combustion engine automobiles?
That's kind of mixed. I think in rural areas, truly rural, dirt roads that have ruts and 12 inches of snow, I think there's a big education process. So the first is our rates are lower that my company trucks the Lightning, and so I can get, I don't know what the equivalent is, but it's probably 60% cheaper to charge it than it is to fill with gas. I think it's like anything that you've heard. I think we're seeing a higher adoption rate. We're seeing more tourists that come in using EVs. I think some of the things that are hard locally is we've always had kind of a depressed economy, so we're not a wealthy community. So I don't think it's that people want to use their old gas cars. I think it's an affordability issue. I think in Taos, and Rob, you've been in Taos, we only have one car dealership. And so, rural folks, most folks like to go or used to like to go to car lots and actually look at cars. If you only have one, there's not too much to look at unless you go to Albuquerque. I do think there's a growing trend, but I think it's just going to be slower. We're working with the state. So coming up at the end of this year, all public transportation in northern New Mexico will be electric buses and electric vans. So I think that's part of the process to educate our community that electrification of transportation is important and it's viable because you're on an electric bus. But I really think it's an affordability issue more than it is anything else.
Well, there certainly are a lot of ruts on a lot of the roads in Taos, but that's part of the charm of Taos. You either kind of get it or you don't. Does anyone else have a comment that's here? Please step up to the mic, Ron. Tell us your name. I know your name, but tell everybody else your name.
My name's Ron Mulick. It's more of a suggestion. I don't know if anybody is from Ramona Water District here. All our water that we receive up here is pumped up 1,000 feet, and it's quite expensive for power. So if we get a representative maybe from the water district, it'll help every individual person that's getting a water bill with the power cost. Bring our bill down.
Yeah, every little bit helps with that. That's a lot of pumping charges to get the water up here. Luis, Ramona is around 15 to 2,500 feet in elevation. Some of it's on the west end is down to 12, and it's pumped. I think the Poway pump station is like 300 or 400 foot elevation.
Oh wow!
So it's a lot of pumping charges. Over $1 million annually. Over $1 million. Oh, yeah, you haven't worked there for a while. Let's see. Walt had another interesting observation here. We are in the early stages of the transition to a fully electrified renewable energy world. Are the Kit Carson Co-op members ready for what this means to their homes and their vehicles, or is there still some educational messaging required? What is the members' view of climate change?
So I do think there's education. A lot of Taos is a old community also. Is formed in the fort. The Indians, the Pueblos were here before anyone, and still adobe homes. So when you talk about electrification, adding a charger is going to be expensive. And so one of the things that the co-op is doing is the co-op itself is adding a lot of chargers within the community at locations that is convenient. I do think a lot of our members are ready for electrification. I think we've always had it. Your cell phone needs a battery. Flashlights. We've always used it. Our ski valleys are starting to electrify their fleets. But I think it's always education because it's new. You don't have electric gas stations, so to speak, or electric filling stations. As far as climate, we have a diverse community. And we have a resort. We have 4 resorts. I would say there's a resort on the east side of our system that caters to a lot of our folks from Texas that don't really feel climate change is here. But we have we talk to them about the other benefits of renewable energy, like price, resilience, reliability. But we do have a lot of folks that are concerned about the climate. And so, as I mentioned earlier, under the Democratic controlled model, we try to balance everyone's issues, and we've moved forward where this addresses the climate change issue. One thing I failed to mention to our to the group here is all these facilities we built with local labor. We had a couple of developers brought them together, see if they could join to form a larger company to build these facilities. So there's an economic development component. And they created some job skills that they now export to other communities building solar. Increased tax base. So there's big economic benefit of building local resources that all the communities enjoy, whether you believe this is a climate issue or not. But I think most of our membership sees the value of going renewable for whatever reason, and I think we've learned to respect their position and move forward. So, but for many, climate is a big issue, and we have a lot of groups formed and talking about that we visit about. But I think, in fairness to the rest of the membership who doesn't think, we have to balance their interests also.
Thanks. Come on up. State your name.
Hello, my name is Chuck Berry. Earlier, you mentioned that the origins of your co-op, formed out of the electrification of a rural area when there really was another option. And you also mentioned that there were, I might have the number wrong, something like 850 co-ops in the United States.
Right.
Are there examples of areas creating a co-op that already is served by a major utility? I'm guessing it'd be an arduous process and probably cost prohibitive to have a co-op form and divorce from a major utility to cover the cost of all the existing infrastructure. But are there examples of, in the last 20, 30 years of a co-op forming that's already served by a major utility?
I don't know right off. What I see, and I can do some research and get back to Rob with information. What I do see, though, is some of these major cities that gave territory to co-ops, where now the co-op is moving into the territory of the city. I'll give you an example. Denver. There's a co-op, United Power. They now have over 100,000 meters. They serve a lot of North Denver, which was Xcel Energy. Xcel Energy years and years ago under Public Service Colorado traded that because it was farmland. They didn't think anything was going to be built. And they traded it for where the new airport in Denver was going to be built. And so there again was a win-win. The new airport was a big load, but these farmlands are turned into kind of suburbs now. Same things happening in Minneapolis, where kind of the farmland right outside was co-op territory. And as the city's growing into the co-op area, you have metropolitan areas that now have co-ops not because a co-op was formed, the city grew into the rural areas through the suburbs. We're seeing a lot of that. Austin, the largest co-op in the country, is in Pedernales. It sits right out. It's in Johnson City, Texas, right outside of Austin, Texas. So, and that, I think it's Austin Utility, Pedernales, that probably has almost 300,000 meters. But Austin's growing, and so you see this this urban expansion going into rural areas that is already formed by a co-op. From presentations I've seen, the customer satisfaction is people like the co-op model because they have a say, versus the invest-owned utility, where unless you're a stockholder, you do not have a say. I mean, I just listened to the gentleman that had to, wait an hour and a half to get an answer or a non-answer. That wouldn't happen in a co-op setting. It just wouldn't, regardless how big. So I kind of see the opposite. As cities expand, they're expanding to rural areas that are already served by co-ops, and so you're getting these large co-ops in urban settings.
Thank you, Chuck. Our president, Joyce Strand, had a question. Ramona probably won't be building microgrids for several years. Can we anticipate any new technology that will facilitate development? Is new technology either available now or coming soon that will help to create an independent microgrid renewable energy co-op utility either faster or with additional capability than current technology?
Well, there is technology. There's I know one. They're owned by Amera Technologies, and basically what they're doing is they're overbuilding with a DC system. So what they're doing is they're overbuilding subdivisions, just putting 2 wires, DC. Every home has solar and batteries, and you create a network, so you share. And so you create a microgrid by basically sharing resources. There's an Air Force base, Kirtland Air Force Base, that's located by Sandia National Labs, that actually has a working model. And Rob, I can introduce you to the guy. He's from Albuquerque, and he's going to come and visit Kit Carson. Be happy to put you in contact. But the answer is, yeah, there is, and it could be DC based. It doesn't have to be an AC system. It could be DC based, with every home in this subdivision having solar and battery before the meter, and that way you share. So if one solar panel goes out and you need power, you get it from the second, from your neighbors, and it's more a community type effort. But I think that technology's here. It's just how do you apply it? But yeah, I think those type of opportunities lie right in front of us.
Thanks. I'll take you up on that. In addition to myself and my wife, who share living in Ramona and Taos, here's another fellow that is in the same situation. Norm, come and tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Norm Burkhardt, and I won a door prize at the annual meeting of the Kit Carson Co-op this summer. My question, though, is relative to the space and the open space here in Ramona that might be applicable. We still have open space here. Someone earlier mentioned the 40 acres next to the high school.
Stay a little closer.
And the water district is the only sovereign, you might say, jurisdictional body here, municipal body in Ramona, and they have a well-field park with quite a few acres of open land. I'm not sure if you could relate to them the fact that if they put some power collecting devices there, they could pump their water up the hill a lot cheaper. It would be a natural tie-in for them, but I don't know what the process would be, or if Sustainable Ramona has approached the water district, or what the complications might be, because they're a public body.
I'm going to interject real quickly. Sustainable Ramona is partnering with the Water District and the Barona Reservation, and working on grants together. But Ron, can you elucidate Norm? Is there anything you know about what he was talking about that might... Yeah. But but talk in the mic. Sorry, got to get up again. Thanks, Norm. Good to see you. Norm and I used to be on the planning group together hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, the Water District has quite a bit of property, not just there, but also they have a sewer system out there on Rangeland Road, and it's quite a big area for if they wanted to do something out there. I also look at the grasslands. I don't know physically if that would affect the environmental issues out there.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah.
So we're looking at different. So in our Reyes, we try to not kind of damage the contours or the character of the land. And so we have a lot of kind of like daisies growing underneath. Sagebrush under some are cleared, but I think solar facilities are really flexible and can be kind of low level. One of the growing opportunities is agrivoltaics. There are more and more, and this is happening a lot in Colorado, where planning and zoning don't want to give up farmland or grassland up, from ag to industrial. So what developers are introducing, and we've actually studied it, is basically, it's still growing within the solar facility, but a dual use. So you can grow a crop, you can grow grass, community gardens. We are working with both Los Alamos National Labs and NRail on what kind of shading, what kind of plants or crops and the shading. But that's really a growing discussion that in Colorado, planning and zoning rejected 80 megawatts solar facility. The company came back and said, we'll allow goats and sheep to still graze like they had, so they'll still be able to feed. The solar facility was approved and is now being built. So agrivoltaics and this multi-use of land is really catching on. And so I do think if there's vacant properties that you can bring multiple uses without destroying, like it said, any environmental concerns, should be looked at. Our first solar facility was 2008. So we finished in 22, but I've been doing solar for a few years. These are very reliable, low maintenance facilities. They don't need a lot of water. This idea, if you want to clean the panels, that's great. We don't do that. The wind and whenever it rains, we'll clean the panels. We look at it once a month just to make sure that during fire season, the grass isn't too dry so we don't have a fire. But outside of, they're very low maintenance. They fit in most areas where people don't even notice them. And now there's a kind of multi-use with this agrivoltaic discussion. And again, Rob, I can send you papers that we've had done for us and that the labs are doing to validate this multi-use of land to enable renewable energy and other uses of land.
Great. Regarding agrivoltaics, Sustainable Ramona has delved into it fairly deeply at our forum. Was that in September? Well, last year, it was a few months ago, we had an actual presentation on agrivoltaics, and it's an amazing symbiotic relationship between the solar panels being more efficient because they're running cooler due to the plants, and the plants giving greater crop yields because they're not full blast sun all the time. And I was reading this morning, in fact, about a new technique, came from Europe, and they're getting ready to put these in Vermont, but it's bifacial, is that what it's called?
Bifacial.
Yes, panels where they generate electricity from both sides of the panel, and they're mounted vertically, and they can run the tractors between and all kinds of things. So agrivoltaics is a great area that really works well with cattle and other animals and crops. So that's a good one to keep an eye on, and definitely would work here. We're actually talking with the Ramona Vintners Association about it as well. I have one. I think I've got all the questions I had. So Bob Maycomer. Bob is a member of Sustainable Ramona.
Hi, Luis. It's great to hear your talk tonight. We really appreciate the expertise that you're bringing to us tonight with all of the years of experience that you've got. I was also intrigued to hear that you're right up on the latest research in Colorado. They're actually coining another new word now in addition to agrivoltaics. They're calling it eco-voltaics, which, as you mentioned, could be farmland, it could be daisies, it could be grazing land, and we've got a lot of that opportunity here in Ramona. I wanted to switch a little bit your focus and ask a little different question. I seem to feel that your emphasis is not on rooftop solar, probably because the density of population and residents is not conducive to that, and it's a known fact that it's cheaper to build a solar farm. But our problem here in San Diego, down in the city of San Diego, is different than what we have here in Ramona. We still buy our power from San Diego Gas and Electric, so we're paying the 48 cents a kilowatt hour. The city of San Diego has a right within their contract with San Diego Gas and Electric to cancel that contract anytime they want. There's a grass movement started here a couple months ago, gaining signatures to create a new community, not-for-profit solar, a power company.
Called Power San Diego.
Yeah, it's a really good website, Luis. If you just Google Power San Diego, it's actually called We Are Power San Diego, and some very experienced, knowledgeable power people are behind it. And they've got quite a push on getting the 80 to 120,000 signatures that we need by the end of April to get it on next month or next year's ballot, which will be in November. At that point, the citizens who live within the city, of which there are something like 1.4 million people, could vote whether they would want to throw out their tried and true, trusted, reliable, with all its other deficiencies, power company, and go with a new one. The state of Maine did something very similar just this past November. It took them a year. They're a year ahead of us. And they have 1.4 million people, and the state voted it down, but the city of Portland, Maine, voted it in. So my question to you today is, how do you feel about a very densely populated urban area like the city of San Diego creating its own not-for-profit, community-owned power consortium that would in fact emphasize rooftop solar, as opposed to needing to pay the transmission cost from big solar farms over in the desert that SDG&E makes its profits, its investors makes its profits on?
Yeah, I think there are some challenges. I think, first of all, and I am biased, guys, but the co-ops, we're in public power. So the public has the say of what happens. And so I think that's always a benefit, especially as electricity and the electricity burden on folks has become so high, and the need for electricity has become so reliable, that I do think the citizens should have more say in the type of power that they want. I do think what you're talking about, there could be a transition. One reason our model works is, we basically, everyone's going to get solar power even if you don't want it. We really wanted everybody in our system to be able to access renewable energy. It didn't matter if you were a low income or you're the wealthiest person. From Kit Carson's perspective, we treated you all the same. And I think there are some benefits to that. I think integrating both rooftop, I would suggest that always adding storage, and then putting some community solar around to have some benefits for those folks or those areas that it isn't conducive to put rooftop. But I think the model, it started as a rural model, but I think it applies to urban folks. I tell my board, people are people, and when they have the ability to speak their mind and really are relevant in the discussion, things happen. When you think you're being imposed something that you have no say, then there's a natural tendency to fight it. So, as I mentioned earlier, Denver, Colorado, big growing city. It's growing into the co-op territory. Minneapolis, St. Paul, growing into the co-op territory. In Austin, in Dallas, co-ops serve that. As those cities grow, they're growing into co-op territories. And so they're urban people. They live in co-op service areas. And so I do think if there's an opportunity, a democratically controlled electric utility is the best way to go.
And I appreciate that, Luis, that the argument against it here that SDG&E is putting forth is that there isn't enough space, physically enough space to power all the people that live in the city of San Diego with rooftop solar. And in fact, that's not true. There is enough space if you include parking lots and every available space that, and the other thing you mentioned is that we want to provide solar to all the people, and not all the people have a rooftop. A lot of people live in an apartment buildings or can't put a solar because there's a tree or something. So community power with solar is the goal here in the city, and that would then relieve us of the burden of the investors that have every right to make the money because they invested the money. But I want to mention the city of Menifee here in California is doing a 4-year research program, I guess. They got together with a builder and a solar company and a university and the power company there, and they built 291 homes that have 5.4 kW solar on them, including in the sale price, has 2 batteries in the garage, including the sale price, all the homes are connected to each other on a grid, and that grid is then connected to a community battery bank. And for 4 years, the University of California is going to be researching if 5.4 kW is enough for people to live on. The houses are all wired for solar battery charging of electric cars, and whether that's enough power to do it. That's not very much power, but it's supposedly a very well-built, well-insulated home, so it may or may not take more than that. But I think that's the future. And how does that sound to you? You mentioned that you do have some people that have electric cars, but they're probably not charging. Are they charging their cars from their solar, or are they buying power from your utility?
So both. I mean, if they charge during the daytime, we're supplying their power to their house. We have, out of the 30,000 meters, only 700 have rooftop solar. So again, ours may be different because just recently solar became financeable, but before, you have, people use it for taxes and all, investment. This is a poor community, so maybe our demographics were different. That's why the co-op stepped in, is to fill that gap. But I think the model that you're talking about, once you refine, whether it's 5.4 or 10 kW, I think that's really the model of the future is having microgrids within microgrids. If you really want to have high resilience and reliability, and in our case, and I think in California's case, weather extreme storm, creating the ability to separate yourself from the greater grid to have power, and then to have it reliable. And there's a big delta here. If we're at, let's say, at the high 14 cents and you're at 48, there's a big delta here, where investment still can be made and I think lower those costs. But I do think more localized generation is a way to go if we want higher reliability and resilience.
Thanks, Luis.
Thanks, Bob. We have the library until 7, and it's a little after 7. Beverly's really nice about letting us extend a little bit. But Norm, you've got another comment, so let's do that, and then we got a couple other things to say.
This will take about 30 seconds in regards to what Bob was saying about other, besides agrivoltaic, the idea of covering parking structures and parking lots. There's a parking lot off Salazar down toward the rodeo grounds in Taos. It's got elevated solar panels. The airport in San Diego has elevated solar panels. It gives shade to the cars that have to park under them. We've got a Kmart parking lot. Pardon me, it's not Kmart anymore, but it'll be something. There's a huge open space, not just the roof of the building, but you've got an opportunity to put power collection on all the parking lots that Bob was talking about in the city. And I think there ought to be a scheme where that could be promoted. That was my comment.
Norm, we need to get you involved more in Sustainable Ramona. We are currently working on parking lot solar.
That was my comment for the design review board on the redevelopment of the Kmart.
Right, right. Bill? You got to talk in the mic because we're recording you.
Just a quick note that the country of France now requires every parking lot with over 80 cars to have solar canopies. Mm-hmm. Every single freaking parking lot. So they've taken that seriously. So
there's a whole lot to adding solar electrical generation over already built areas rather than disrupting pristine environmental areas and having to run giant new transmission lines out. Do you have anything else on that, Luis?
No, I think anytime we have 4 parking canopies, and we've helped 2 schools get parking canopies. It's smart use of the land. They're used for parking, shading, and they deliver energy to the building directly. Kit Carson has a parking canopy on its property, so during the day we get 100% of our energy from our parking canopy. So I do think those type of solutions, different solutions collectively end up giving you the best, kind of the best plan. It's not a one size fits all. And kind of discussion is how our co-op meetings go, right? Put a lot of ideas out there, figure out which ones are going to work, which ones are ready for prime time, which ones need some time to be vetted, and then you move forward. But this is exactly kind of the co-op setting, is you put all these ideas and it works. We have parking canopies, we have batteries, and you have a community that's really engaged in our day-to-day activity. And rates that are affordable.
Luis, I think you told me when I was there that about 2/3 of the power for Kit Carson, comes from the canopies under the parking lot out front.
Yeah, but during the day, because we have our broadband, during the day, all our energy is because in Taos we don't need air conditioning. So I think one of the drivers in San Diego is probably air conditioning. So during the summertime, all that parking canopy serves our entire building.
Well, folks, if nobody else has a specific question, we'll be wrapping up soon. I'd like to mention that anybody who's interested in becoming more a part of Sustainable Ramona, there is a booth that we have manned or womaned in the back, so we'd love to get your name and email address, etc. And that how to get more involved with this group. And Luis Reyes, thank you so very much for your time today.
No problem. It's a pleasure meeting with you.
This has been incredibly interesting and educational for everyone here.
You guys have a very nice evening, and anytime you guys want to visit, I'm open for that.
Thank you very much for that. And I will take you up on a couple of the things that you mentioned next time I'm in town, which I think is going to be February.
All right, well, just stop by. So, guys, good night, and I'm going to sign off.
All right. Thank you again.
Good night.
Well, Sustainable Ramona likes to do these kinds of things, so we'll keep them coming, but stay as involved with us as you can. Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight.